Good morning from sacred space at Titania's realm. We got cut off. That naughty little genie in my laptop shocked us off mid-video. No reason. I didn't touch anything. It's driving me mad, people of Earth. But I'm back to continue with the story, which we had only just begun. It's very annoying. Very annoying indeed. We got cut off just as man was trying to shake life back into woman who had newly been created by God, but although he'd blown life into her twice, she wasn't coming alive. So man decided to have a go as well. Her limp body shook like a rag doll, but her eyes stayed shut. All at once, he seemed to grow angry. His hair began to fly. He ground his teeth. His eyes blazed. And God was suddenly afraid what might happen as woman's arms flapped and flopped and her head joggled and rolled. He caught man's arm and jerked him away. "Steady on," God shouted. "She's fragile." But man began to pound the earth with his fists. "I can't bear it," he cried. "Do something. She's my other half. You can't just leave her lying there on the cold ground." God stared at him hard. Easy enough to say, do something. But if life wouldn't go into this marvellous new creation of his, then it wouldn't go. And that was that. He didn't know what else he could do. Sounds a bit like God's a bit of a quitter here, doesn't it? Do you think that God's a quitter? Maybe a procrastinator at times. Maybe comes in my life at the 11th hour when I'm a screaming fucking mess and I think everything's finally over and it's the last fucking hurrah and I've given up and resigned myself to my fate. He's jumped in. Then, sometimes at the very last half a breath, through strangulations, babies. The very last moment. All the illnesses when I was on my last breath too. It's astonishing, people of Earth. What do they say? Is it in the Christian Bible? Or is it in the Torah? God moves in mysterious ways. Well, sometimes I wonder now, at this late stage of my life, if there even is God. It's an astonishing thought given how religious I used to be. Maybe there's only life and death and holding your own and resilience and courage and determination and creativity and love and passion and romance if you can get it, if it's meant for you, and life force and discovery and exploration, magic and dreaming. Maybe all of that is God too. Maybe it's not. Maybe they're just human constructs. I won't overthink it though. Let's just continue with the story. In this story, there's God and he's a bit lazy and gives up a bit too quick, in my opinion. Somebody needs to put a rocket up his bum and remind him to keep persevering. Even if you fail 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. Eventually, you push your way through that glass ceiling. I don't know how, since I've never been able to push through it, but It works for other people, babies. So on that night, let's keep going. God stared at him hard. Easy enough to say, do something. But if life wouldn't go into this marvellous new creation of his, then it wouldn't go, and that was that. He didn't know what else he could do. That's a powerful sentence right there. He didn't know what else he could do. That implies someone else might have known exactly what to do, or he needed to put his faith back into himself. Stir himself up a bit, like a cyclone or a tornado or a whirlwind. Build energy, expand, motivate, inspire, conflagrate, manifest, co-create, collaborate. But to do that, you need a team of people who actually give a fuck about you and want to see you achieve and succeed and wealth create and become. Really does take a team of people to support you in that goal. If you don't have anyone to look after you and back you up, support you, you flounder for 3 decades like I've done. It's not to say I haven't had a lot of support, mind you. I can name my patrons. They like to remain anonymous on YouTube, but I can name them. There have been several who've been wonderful earth angels to me. But if I've been supported career-wise or with my writing or with my silversmithing efforts or anything that would get me a little niche in life and make me self-determined and financially stable and have my own little business one day and not rely on this fucking evil government that leaves people out to die, literally stripping the shops bare. The motherfuckers. But anyway, I could have become, I could have, would have, should have, might have achieved in life. Just saying. No use being bitter though. I'm old now and maybe my time is in it anyway, and that too I have to make peace with and be comfortable with. Ultimately, as I said in a video yesterday, nothing really matters. It's all illusion, it all just disappears into the winds of time. What does Bob Dylan used to say? The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. Yeah, babies. Anyway, while God was deciding that he didn't know what else he could do at that moment, a small bird flew down and landed on woman's left big toe. Let me have a try, said the bird. I have magic. All birdies have magic. My little Charlie was one of the most magical little souls I ever met. Unfortunately, not magical enough to get that fucking egg out of her and save her life. But she brought powerful magic and great joy and delight to my life for 8 years, so to you, my little one, wherever you are. It was the nightingale. Nightingale had a most peculiar voice. God looked at this slim, brown, tiny creature and remembered all the trouble he'd had with the voice box. Nightingale's voice box was incredibly complicated. God had been struggling to get this voice box right. Excuse me, I get a bit maudlin when I'm sick, don't mind me. And then one night, it had come to him in a dream, which is often how artists, creators, makers get inspiration from dreams. The perfect voice box. And it solved one of his toughest problems. How to get the voice of the seven seas into an organ the size of a common housefly. And there it was in his dream. He'd woken up with a jolt and snatched it out of the air before it could vanish. He got it, but grabbing it like that, half asleep, he'd broken it. And what a job that had been, trying to start it up again inside the bird's tiny throat. Still, it just about worked, finally. But the voice, wonderful as it sounded, was obviously only the bits and pieces of something much more tremendous. Try if you like, sighed God, and he watched gloomily as Nightingale perched on woman's nose and began to sing. Man had never heard the nightingale sing, and now it really let itself go. It couldn't believe his ears. As it sang, his eyes grew very large and round. Suddenly they closed. His head dropped forward on his chest, and he was in a trance. And a row of 8 monkeys sitting on the branch of a tree above him fell to the ground, bounced once, and lay still, eyes closed, in a trance. What singing! But woman never stirred. And though Nightingale flung out his chest and fluttered his wings, and though his voice was a blur of throbbing song, woman simply went on lying there, like a heap of clay. I remember when I used to do that for 20 hours a day, barely alive, not quite dead, but might as well have been. Dear Goddess, those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end. And here I am, 1 month and 6 days shy of turning 60, and life is for the living, babies. Make every day count. Enjoy it, bless it, be it, believe it, trust in it, love it. It's yours, it's mine, it's ours. No good, cried God. He clapped his hands and Nightingale flew, startled, into a bush. As God clapped his hands, something else moved. A snake, the deadly puff adder, lifted his head. He had actually been lying tucked in under woman's side for the warmth of God's hands that was still in the clay. And now he peered over her waist, his forked tongue dancing, and said, I think I can solve your problem. I think I can awaken this perfect person. And his long mouth seemed to smile. Snakes really do smile at you, by the way, not just because of their very wide-shaped mouth. Sybil smiled at me quite frequently in the 11 or 12 days. She arrived on Halloween and she left on the 11th. Yes, 12 days. She smiled at me, as long as I didn't get too close and impede on her energy, but she was a lovely girl. A lovely, lovely girl. I wonder where the snakes have gone now. They must have sensed the oncoming storm, cyclone. Haven't been many birds around today, so they're all hunkered down too. Wise ones. Always watch what the animals and the birds do, people of Earth. They're the wise ones. Sometimes we human, with all our intelligence, lack the connection to our earth and basic instincts. Herd animals, herded, domesticated, at the mercy of other humans who don't always have our best interest at heart. I mustn't be bitter though. I've survived them. I survived the COVID epoch up until now, 5 years later exactly. Wow. That's all I have to say about that. God eyed the puff adder anxiously. He didn't trust the snake at all with its eye chips of granite. He was almost sorry he'd made him. What a terrible thing to say about a snake though. Why would you be sorry you made that? There's worse creatures out in the world. Far, far worse. Ticks, and not terribly fond of mosquitoes and flies either. Anyway, when he'd pressed those eyes into place, one had cut his thumb, and the wound had festered for days. Oh, there's Mr. Crow in the fence. I was just saying I haven't seen the birds around, but there's one, showing me that they're still active and getting on with their best lives. There's two of them. Sweetness. Mama too feels happier now. I worry about the birdies. Under woman's heart, said Puff Adder, lives a frog. It got in there with the clay you used. You didn't notice. God was surprised to hear that. I can smell it, said Puff Adder, through her ribs. And he flickered his dancing thread of a tongue over woman's chest. Here it is. He tapped with his nose to show the exact spot. This frog, he went on, simply sucks up all the life you breathe into her as you breathe the life in. The frog swells up. Look. And it did seem to God, as he looked more closely, that woman's stomach was slightly swollen there under her heart. The puff adder laughed. Now, he said, watch me extract it. And he began to glide up beside woman's throat and over her chin. It was just about to slide his blunt, strange head between her parted lips when God caught his tail and threw him into a stiff little thorn bush nearby. The puff adder yelped with pain. You'll pay for this, he cried. I would have picked that frog out in no time. Then you could have breathed life into woman, and she would have lived. But now, well, roared God, now what? The snake was silent. I know you, God shouted angrily. You'd have gotten in there and eaten the frog, if there is a frog, and then just curled up in its place. That's what you would have done, and you'd never have come out again. You'd have been 1,000 times worse than any frog. The puff adder gave a wild laugh. Then he hissed. You're right, I would. But at least woman would have come to life, and what a life. She and I together, we'd have conquered the world. We'd have driven you out among the farthest stars. Man would have crawled after us in the dust. God was furious. He didn't know what to think. Had the snake told the truth? Was there truly a frog under woman's heart? A frog that sucked up the breath of life as he breathed it into her? He stared at man, lying there in a trance among the monkeys, and he stared at the faint bulge under woman's beautiful, lifeless ribs, and he gnawed the soft inside of his lower lip. God advertised for help. Divine rewards for whoever can make woman live. Creatures talked about little else. Every day somebody came up with an idea. None worked. And woman went on lying there, perfect and lifeless. Till one day, as God sat in his workshop with his head in his hands, pondering this great problem, he heard a rustling voice, a familiar voice. He lifted his head. Whose voice was it? What was it say? Surely he knew that voice. And a strange expression came over his face and his heart began to thump. He twisted round and now he heard the voice clearly. Oh, dear goddess. It was coming from under a dusty heap of workshop rubbish in that far corner. I can help you, it whispered. I have the answer. In 2 strides, he was across the room and lifting the rubbish aside carefully, piece by piece. The dust rose and the gloom was thick. But at last he saw. He put one hand flat on the ground and bent even lower and peered. Yes, there she was, embedded in rubbish, like a crab under a flat rock. His own little mother. Sounds a bit fucking familiar, doesn't it? Well, Mama T's not embedded in rubbish under a flat rock. Daughters of mine out there in the world. She's surviving, with or without you, my babies. Gently. I mustn't be bitter, though. I really mustn't. My entire life has meant nothing, but I won't be bitter, because it's not over till it's over. And when it's over, it's going to be one hell of a party. There'll be rejoicing for days. Loved ones and enemies alike. Babies. Gently, he lifted her and carried her out into the middle of the room. She was a great knot of doubled up arms and legs, like a big, dry, dusty spider, and almost weightless. He set her down, ran out, and came back with a glass of brandy. He smacked her wet, blackened lips, and her eyes glittered. She smiled up at him, easing her joints slowly. I know your problem, she said. She half closed her eyes and seemed to rest a little. Then she said, first, bring me the new moon. That was easy for God. He reached down the new moon. He watched as she half crawled over the floor, lifted the cellar hatch and disappeared down the dark hole with the new moon cupped in her hand. He peered after her. He never dared lower himself into that place, but it had always been his mother's favourite den in the old days. And now, suddenly, her skinny hand rose up out of it again, holding the new moon like a bowl that was brimful of dark liquid. Take this, said her voice, out of the darkness. Put it in your kiln, just as it is, and stoke it very hot. Wouldn't mind buying myself a kiln one day. I want to learn how to do enamelling. It's another expensive, feckin' hobby I've decided I want to attempt. And, I've barely I've barely mastered silversmithing. So I go on these little segues and circumnavigate my own existence and realise everything's always just on the edge of madness because I don't have the money, quite enough money and resources. But I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind. It's something to think about. That and a rolling machine I need too. And a Forder. Everything runs to thousands of dollars when you're a silversmith. So, and everyone expects everything for nothing. Won't pay for your skills and your artistry, so fuck that shit. So I can only really make for my own enjoyment, and spending thousands of dollars on equipment for, the occasional few pieces just for myself or my friends as gifts is hardly a viable, expense, but assets and liabilities. But on the other hand, times might get better. I might find a way to sell my creations. Might get supported one day. Not very bloody likely. But you never know. You never know. I mustn't give up. I mustn't give up. Must keep manifesting. In great positivity and great joy and delight and in hopefulness. Meanwhile, I read stories for free on YouTube just to comfort myself in my old age. Sad but true. Anyway, where was I? My hand started itching for some weird reason. Odd. Very odd. Right. As God took the new moon in his hand, a little waft of fear touched him. Usually the moon was icy cold, but now it was warm. What was in it? Was it what he thought it was? He bent closely to sniff. Was it blood? How was this going to help him? But his mother had always known best, in spite of her oddity. Some mothers are like that, sweet peas. Know best, in spite of our oddities. So fuck you, non-believers and mummies. This particular mummy, Mama too. Fuck you all. Those of you who don't support me and don't stand with me in a time of crisis. But, and there's always a but, we will thrive, jive turkey our hides, and prove the naysayers and the enemies and the spiteful ones wrong yet again, as we have a habit of doing for the past almost 60 years. People out walking little tiny dachshunds. It's very cute. So God did as he was told. Can you imagine God having a mummy doing as he was told? I like that. Although it depends on the mummy. I had a very evil mother. So I had to escape into marriage at a very young age to survive her. She never let go. Not even for 2.5 years after her fucking death. Some mummies are not worth having, trust me on that one. So the fact that my own daughters feel the same way about me is kind of tragic, actually. I was a far better mummy than my mother, but, well, I guess I wasn't perfect either. It is what it is. Taking care not to spill it. He put the new moon into his kiln. He sealed the door and began to stoke the fire beneath. The flames roared up. As he went on sliding logs into the blaze, God began to feel very happy. It was just like old times, when his mother was teaching him how to do things. She must have been quite the creatrix herself, am I right? The hotter, the brighter the better, he sang to himself. He almost forgot about the cold clay shape of woman away there in the forest, and man stretched out in a trance under a tree among the monkeys. And all the time the kiln glowed brighter. Soon it seemed to be throbbing and almost transparent, the colour of apricot. Not quite, but almost. With pulsing spots of dazzling whiteness. Oh, it is kind of a bit similar. Can I get it white hot? He whispered. Hotter, hotter, brighter, brighter, better, better. But at that very moment the air seemed to explode in his face. Woof! The whole kiln had exploded and God fell over backwards with his eyebrows blown off. Oh, that hurts just thinking about it. Ouch! And as he fell, something flashed above him, out of the explosion, like a long flame streaked with black. He sat for a while, looking at the reeking crater where the kiln had been. Then, as he got up, knocking the fiery, smouldering splinters from his hair and beard and muttering, "Well, I'm sure that wasn't supposed to happen. What a mess." He suddenly felt uneasy and looked around. A strange animal stood there watching him. A lanky, long, orange-red beast, painted from one end to the other with black stripes. Its belly and throat were frosty white. Its pelt shone. It lashed its long tail and stared into God, as if it saw something moving in there. It was like no creature he had ever seen. But the strangest thing of all was what it held in its mouth. "It's caught a monkey," was God's first thought. "It's already started killing my monkeys." But then he saw it wasn't a monkey at all. It was a tiny human being. A baby human being. Had this leapt out of the kiln? Was this his mother's magic? How was this going to bring woman to life? The tiny human being was quite nice, but that beast was more likely to frighten her to death. No God could see His mother's magic had got all mixed up. And now he remembered why he'd left her in the corner and heaped the rubbish on top of her and hired the beetles to feed her. It's pretty much what my daughters did to me, but metaphorically speaking. 2023. Motherfuckers. But I've survived till this very moment in time. Revenge is sometimes a dish served cold. Sometimes it's your merest survival, babies. Remind me to spend my small, tiny bit of settlement before I die, so they don't profit any more from me than they already have. Enough is enough, babies. And but then I need to put that aside for my funeral, so I can at least spare them the ignominy of a Centrelink burial. But on the other hand, who gives a fuck? I'll be dead. It's not like I have to be prideful then. Dead people have no pride. Ironic, isn't it? Well, anyway, we'll see what time brings me, what the gods bring me, what abundance and magic and manifestations might still be co-created with me from now into the future. Anything is possible. Anything. But the beast had turned its head, holding the baby high, clear of the brambles and poison ivy. It went off through the forest, straight towards woman. God began to run. He wanted to get to woman first, but the beast began to bound. In 3 leaps it disappeared away ahead in the thick jungle. Then God heard the cry of the monkeys, and a strange hoarse bark, not like man at all, but God knew it was man. And when he reached the clearing, everything had happened. Man and the monkeys were all together on a high bough in the monkey's tree, staring down with eyes of fright, and the great beast stood over woman's body. You can just make out, I think this is meant to show some kind of explosion or power manifestation. But you can see almost mayhem. It looks like a big cat of some kind there. And some kind of supernova here. And there's the crescent moon that God's mummy, over there, sorry, God's mummy handed to him. The mother of God, Shekhinah. Shekhinah. Oh, blessed Shekhinah. Drive that cyclone out to sea where it can cause no harm to any living being. Let the sea absorb its violence and suck it down deep, deep into the earth and drift it away. Amen. Vasula. Psychedelic dreamer dreams. So all I can do is pretend that you can make it all go away. Sometimes you gotta pretend. Fake it till you make it. Weather the storms in life, babies. Create a new story. Begin again. With good, kind, loving people who have your back, your sides and your front, who delight in your company and love you no matter what, no matter who, and choose you every morning, noon and night, and share delight. Yes, that's a spell I've been spelling for eons. Babies. As God watched, sorry, I just felt an energy moving behind me. It's intense sometimes. Blessed be. As God watched, it laid the midget human being on woman's stomach, stretched its own great striped length beside her, and began to lick her ear. It's nothing like a newborn baby, preferably your own, to give new life to a woman. Even though my births were very, very life-threatening and precarious, and I was married to a monster and I wasn't supported, certainly not supported enough anyway. I needed a lot more support than your average woman because I was ill and traumatised and surrounded by a hotbed of narcissists and psychopaths, so mothering of newborn babies under those circumstances was no easy feat, but I did my best. I fed them from my breast and I gave them everything I could, including materially, although materially was really compensating for lack in other ways, lack of emotional security and stability and safety. So I fucked up there, gave them far too much, gave and fucking gave to people that had no love for me really anyway. Not so much as children, because children's instinct to survive is to love you in the most pure way. And they did love me, my children. Jasmine loved me till till she was about 7. And then when my marriage finally ended and we were cast into poverty and despair, and the 3 strangulations happened in those ensuing years, my children began to look at me as some kind of loser or vagrant or misfit or failure. And that was conditioning from their father and my evil mother, by the way, and other worm-tonguers that got involved, because flying monkeys of narcissists is a real phenomenon, people of Earth. There were many that got on that train wreck to hell and rode me almost to death. So the secondary victims of that were my children. I'm still paying the price now, almost 40 years later. Well, my eldest daughter turned 39 on the 6th of November, so 39 years of struggle as a mother, as a woman, as a soul on this planet. I should go out and play in the cyclone, shouldn't I? Maybe some flying fucking Jetson and Flotsam will just garrot me and it'll be all over babies. But even my friend Jared made a joke about that yesterday. Oh, we're dark. We're so dark. And the funny thing is about us being so dark is we keep surviving against all odds, against all mortal ken. And that too has become a kind of a long, grinding torture device. But it is what it is, people of Earth. So I'll be doing some major manifestations. When the winds get a little bit more whipped up and frenzied, I'll be right on that energy. Because I want my beautiful life with my beautiful family that love me, and my beautiful friends, and one day a wonderful lover who actually loves me and has the stamina and the courage and the decency to stick with me for the rest of our lives together as a couple. Together. Real love. And, wow, could happen one day. Not likely, but it could. It's always that teeny tiny shred of hope. What could happen? It's all a bit silly, isn't it? So anyway, the creature's licking her ear, licking her awake, with the little midget human being lying on her stomach. Bless. At once the baby began to stir its arms and legs. Its mouth opened like the door of a little kiln, and out of it came a thin cry. No one is as helpless and as needful and as primal and as narcissistic and selfish and earthy as a little baby. We've all been there at one stage of our lives. Some of us never evolved from it either. Never quite grew up. Never learned how to share and be generous and be gracious and accepting and grateful and always wanting more and more and more. Nothing was ever good enough or enough. The moment the baby cried, the beast lifted its head and looked into woman's face. And the monkeys in the tree and man beside them all looked down at woman's face. But the face remained quite still, quite lifeless. After a while, the beast again began to lick woman's ear gently, closing its eyes as it licked. And the wrinkled, podgy baby seemed to grow stronger, as if its cries were some kind of food. It shook its fists at the sky. It seemed to be shaking the bars of a cage. All at once, the beast leapt up and bounded away, so lightly it seemed to be weightless, and God saw it had the baby's back in its mouth. The beast stopped, sat down, and watched woman, and the baby hung in its mouth, silent. God, too, watched woman. Then he felt the hair prickle on the back of his legs, and a shiver crawled up his spine and into his hair. The woman's hand was moving. It came slowly to her head till her fingers touched the bridge of her nose, where the nightingale had perched with its sharp claws. She drew a deep breath and sighed. Watching her very closely, the beast came back and laid the baby on her thighs and nudged it with his paw. At once the baby opened its mouth and wailed. The air filled with its cry. And man, too, in the monkey's tree, let out a cry. Ugh! And slid down the trunk to the ground. Then he scampered across to God and peered out from behind him, and what he saw made him cry out again. Ah! Woman was sitting upright, nursing the baby. She bent over it, her hair hanging forward like a curtain. It had happened, and the beast lay at her feet, gazing at God and man. God was astounded. His mother's magic had worked. And how? And what about Frog? And what about the baby? The baby was a brilliant idea. Why had he never thought of it? Wildly excited, God started forward, with man clinging to the fringe of his apron. But the great beast rose to meet them. The hair on its shoulders lifted and spread like the tail of a peacock. Its jaws opened, and a solid blast of sound hit them, a blast like the exploding of the kiln. Man blew away like a straw, and God reeled stumbling after him with his brain spinning. What was this beast? Was it a walking kiln exploding whenever it pleased? What was it? Do you know what you've done? God cried as he came gasping to his mother. Do you know what you've let loose? She was still squatting there on the floor above the cellar hatch. She grinned, showing him all her guns, then put back her head and cackled, her hands dangling over her knees and dancing and dithering there, reminded God of the black tongue of the puff adder. That, she crowed, is the tiger. He's an angel. He is the protector of the human child. God was mystified. This was the first he'd ever heard of angels. Look, Mother, he said, your tiger, or angel as you call it, it's too much. He knocked me over with one shout. He shows no respect. He's too frightful. The baby's all right. In fact, I don't mind the baby at all. The baby's good. But the tiger's overdoing it. Please take him back. Take him back, she cried. How? Just take him back. If he scares me, what's he going to do to the rest of my creation? He's too much. His mother looked at God solemnly. The human child, she said, needs an angel, protector, and the tiger's it. My protector's a wolf. You can't see it, but it's there when needed. Babies. God flew into a tantrum. You need a protector? He yelled. Let him protect you. My world can't handle him. He doesn't fit. If the human child needs a protector, let's have something I can cope with, something that fits. His mother flailed her hands loosely together. Exactly, thought God, like an old chimpanzee. Okay, she laughed. Okay, I'll have him back. It's done. I'm not so sure that's such a good idea, personally. Never strip a human of their spirit protectors. Then she clapped her palms together over her head and held them there, fingers pointing upwards, elbows on her knees, while her face suddenly lowered and her eyes closed. Fleeing from the tiger's roar, man had dived into a garbage pit, where he probably belongs, if the truth be known. Most humans anyway. I guess we've created our own garbage pit with our own eco side. Now we have superstorm, so kind of as you sow, so shall you reap, babies. Dumb motherfuckers. Where were we? Trying to tell stories to get us through our own ecocides. Hearing the laughter of God's mother, the divine feminine, the only one that can save us now. Truly, our Holy Mother. Mother Nature, bringing herself back into balance. Work with her babies in harmonic resonance, and there might be far, far better outcomes instead of poisoning our globe and our own bodies. Time for some morning tea. Things are starting to move up and out. But now he came creeping out and saw God returning. They went together towards woman, man that is, with God going towards woman, out of his own garbage pit, making himself busy and important, as you do. She sat as they'd left her, suckling her baby. Man ran to her and, squatting beside her, reached out to touch her hair and gazed at her with shining eyes. It's how you know when a man really loves you, when he looks at you with genuinely sparkling, shining eyes, and his whole face lights up as if he's seen the most beautiful thing in the world, even though you know you're not actually all that beautiful and don't have a lot to offer the world, and you're sick all the time, struggle all the time. Sometimes people look at you as if you're the most divine creature, and magical and beautiful and blessed, and that too is a gift to you, my darling ones. The tiger had gone. God stood stroking his beard. He looked first at woman, and then at the baby, then at the small gingery striped animal that sat beside woman's crossed ankles, gazing at woman and the baby with sleepy, half-closed eyes. This creature looked quite like a tiger, but it was only the size of the baby. And after one sleepy glance and one sleepy blink, it ignored God and man. "So what's this?" asked God abruptly, pointing to the new creature. Woman leaned her foot over, and the little animal rubbed its ear on her big toe. She wriggled her toes and it pressed its chin onto them, laying back its ears and closing its eyes. "This," she said, "is our pusscat. We call him Tiger." God nodded thoughtfully. So this was how his mother had solved the problem. But at that moment, the pusscat pricked its ears. I could do a bit of a drinky poos actually. I'm thirsty now after all that coffee. Oh, what an existence. What a time to be alive. It's astonishing. The weather's starting to get worse. Yes, lots of grey clouds and it's 11:44 a.m. so we have plenty of time before the cyclone hits, but I guess we're getting the edge of it now. The wind's increased. Wow. Yippee-yi-yo, baby boys and baby girls. Here we go. This creature looked... Oh, and I've read that. Dear goddess. Where are we? God nodded thoughtfully. So this was how his mother had solved the problem. But at that moment, the pusscat pricked its ears. An unfamiliar sound made God look up. It seemed to come from the clouds. No, it came from the mountains. Steep-faced mountains surrounded the forest, a horizon of mountains. They looked like giant grey or brown or blackish faces, propped up in bed with the forests pulled up under their chins like coverlets. Out of those mountains came a strange echoing sound, a strange clangorous cry rising and falling. It was like a terrible singing, a dreadful sound really. As he listened, God felt that same shiver creeping up from the heels into his hair. Just as when woman's hand had moved, and he knew that this was the tiger. He frowned. His frown became almost a grimace. The voice of the tiger seemed to take hold of his brain and twist it. "Tiger," he whispered. "Yes, tiger." As he said the word, he shivered again and felt the hair actually stir on his head. Pardon me. "Tiger," he whispered, and the same weird electrical thrill came again. He gave a little laugh. "Tiger," he growled, then again more fiercely. "Tiger!" His eyes opened wide. He felt his hair standing up on end, and before he knew it, he was roaring out, "Tiger! Tiger! Tiger!" The echo of his roar came bounding and rumbling back off the mountains, mingled with the appalling song of the animal. God stood there as the sounds rolled through him and over him. He had never felt anything like it. It was terrifying, yet he had to admit it. It was wonderful. It was like nothing in his own creation. It was wonderful in a whole new way. What was this strange new thing in his creation? The tiger seemed not to have hurt him. It flowed along, sometimes deep in the jungle gorges, sometimes high on the rough sides where forests hung like the cliffs. Its body resounded like a giant harp as the tree shadows and the sun's rays stroked over it. Slight difference between stoking and stroking. But what's an R between friends? I'm going to have a breakdown. This continues. One of Mama T breakdowns and really breakthroughs and full creation in their own energy and quite formidable and wonderful at times. But not today, babies. We have a cycle. I need all my energy to create upon that wildness and manifest my greatest dreams. What will they be? Only the gods can decree. A tremendous, invisible song. It moved slowly around the mountain circle, full of its dark ideas. I don't know if I agree with tiger being cast in that light as something dark and negative and sinister and evil. I rather like tigers. They're beautiful people. Unless you come upon them in the jungle and they're hungry and with food, then I guess you're kind of fucked. But is there any difference to being at the mercy of a cyclone with an Australian government that's so vicious that they deprive you of supplies, willfully or out of sheer negligence and ignorance? Where it's too dangerous to access hospitals. Exhibit A. They did cut out my sis, but were they fearful of me, acting like I had some kind of leprosy. Put me off going with her again. But sometimes you have to rely upon them, to survive. It's a scary thought, people are there. I hate having to rely upon any other mortal for my survival. And yet, I do. My pension, my home, electricity, phone, water. Well, we'll get a taste of what life is without that if we lose power and connectivity, won't we, people? We won't be taking things for granted. We'll be appreciating all the magic and all the gifts that people provide for each other every day in big and small ways, in their own unique way. I contacted a friend yesterday who posted on social media that she's all alone, but I said, you can come here and be with me. Oh, but your animals. So I don't have any animals. They've all died. Anyway, the conversation went round and round in circles, as it often does with her. Can't be certain whether she was pissed or not. She tends to be on the terps a fair bit at times. And I get it. She's a trauma survivor like me, and that's how she copes with life. But so the unanimous decision was we would stay in our own little homes and weather the storm out alone. I do worry about her though. I do. She actually put a call out for help, and when I offered help, dithered and dallied and worried about my cats. My non-existent dead cats and my bird. So, you see, some people can't be helped. You could send them God himself and they'd stand there going, no, I'm waiting for a better God. Someone with something else to offer, and they'll never be satisfied and you can't help them. And sometimes it's part of their trauma makeup. And sometimes it's just having had to be self-reliant all their life. Their pride and arrogance, not wanting to accept help. And I'm a bit like that too. But if I put a call out for help and help comes, I'm humble enough to accept it. Sometimes it doesn't always come, and it's not always going to actually fix the problem, but just takes the edge off the pain, or gets you through one more day. And it's a strange existence, us CPTSD survivors. We're a strange breed, actually. Well, we were bred that way and tortured that way for decades. So now we choose to live alone and die alone, uncompromising our body autonomy and our residual freedoms, watching the trees whip over the neighbour's roof. So Alfred's showing his presence already. They told us he wasn't coming till tomorrow. You see? I guess this is probably just the beginning of the eddying, building. Oh, blessed be to my fellow humans and all the birds and the animals out there in the wild. Stay safe, find somewhere warm and comfortable to hide. God half turned and stared at the puss cat. It occurred to him that the pusscat too, whether it liked it or not, was breathing that sound. And man too, and woman, and the baby. Everything in his creation was having to listen. Every creature in the thickets, every tiniest insect under the leaves, they were all breathing air that was trembling with the voice of the tiger. Nothing could escape it. And his old mother, she was breathing it too, probably still sitting where he'd left her, with her knobbly shriveled hands closed over her head bowed, smiling into her closed eyelids. The end. So I'm not going to continue with the second story. I'm going to have a rest, conserve energy, because I may need to, well, I don't intend to go out until the cyclone, but you just never know. If I have to, ride through a storm, and so I need to conserve my energy. And have a beautiful day, people of Earth. What will be, will be. Take good care. Remember to remain in the eye of the tiger. Life force, chi, mana, courage, honour and integrity, peace. Purr like a tiger. Rest when you can rest. Fight when you have to fight. Make love to people who love you honouringly, which is not in my purview at the moment. And B, supersede all the traumas and the horrors and the bullshit. And B, keep growing, evolving, becoming, surging and resurging. After every storm, there's a rebuilding and recalibrating. Bye for now.